Hey, what's going on, guys? From Gaming here, back in another video. Today, we're taking a look at how to play Fire Mage for Mythic Plus Season 2 of the War Within. If you want the full guide, we're going to leave a link in the description of the video. You can check it out there. That will have more information like on tier set, enchants, embellishments. We might go over the tier set in this video, I'm not sure yet. But there is more information than what's covered in this video in the guide on our website. With that being said, let's go ahead and jump into Fire Mage. So the main part of Fire Mage is going to be heating up and your hot streak. So these are going to be buffs that are triggered by critical strikes, and every critical strike is going to get you a little bit closer to proccing the hot streak. Now we can proc this in a lot of different ways. We can proc this with our Fire Blast, with our Phoenix Flames, and also our Scorch. And one thing that's kind of key to playing Fire Mage is something called Pyro Fishing. And this is where you can cast a hard cast spell, for example, like a Fire Blast, then follow that up with an instant cast Pyroblast, and if those two land at the same time, that's going to give you twice as many crit opportunities as just one spell hitting the target. Now, typically, this is going to be more useful when you're kind of low on instant cast resources, like you're low on Phoenix Flames, you're low on Fire Blast procs. So just something to kind of keep in mind there. We also have our Combustion. This is going to be your main cooldown, and quite literally, everything is going to revolve around your Combustion. It is extremely important. And the idea of Combustion is to enter it while you're already casting another spell, or right when a fireball goes off. That's going to guarantee your fireball to crit. You can follow that up with a Fire Blast and instantly proc a hot streak. We'll talk about that a little bit more when we get into the rotational stuff. So in this specific build, we are running Sun Fury, and Sun Fury is actually going to lean even further into our hot streak generation. And the reason for this is because Hot Streak is going to grant us something called Spellfire Spheres, which will eventually build into a Glorious Incandescence buff. And we can consume this buff using our Fire Blast. And one thing that's really nice about this is it's going to give us some CDR on our Fire Blast so we can kind of keep the rotation going. Now, another proc that you need to be aware of is our Hyperthermia. And we basically have a low chance whenever we consume one of our hot streaks to make all of our flame strikes and Pyroblasts become critical strikes for 5 seconds. This is really nice because it kind of gives us almost like a mini combustion window that we can play around. And then, of course, we also have our shifting power, which is mainly going to be used to get CDR back on some of our abilities. So while we are channeling shifting power, our mage ability cooldowns are going to be reduced by 10 seconds over 4 seconds. And you can also cast a Fire Blast while you are channeling shifting power. And this is going to ensure that we don't accidentally overcap on Fire Blast charges while we're using Shifting Power, because Shifting Power is basically giving us a free charge of Fire Blast through it. Now, during movement, we can use abilities like our Scorch, and our Scorch is a guaranteed critical strike on targets below 30% health. So in that case, Scorch kind of becomes like an execute for us. So kind of like we said earlier, we have two main spenders. We have our Power Blast and we have our Flame Strike. So Power Blast is going to be used in single target, and in AoE, we'll be using Flame Strike. So we use Flame Strike at 5+ targets, and anything lower than that, we'll be using Power Blast. Okay, let's go ahead and get into the single target opener. I think we covered pretty much everything in terms of general gameplay. Let's kind of try to understand how you should open in both single target and AoE. So in single target, we're going to open up with a mirror image. It's going to help us avoid threat. From there, we're going to be pre-casting a Pyroblast, and as the mob is pulled, the Pyroblast should be going out. Now from here, we're going to be using a Tempered Potion, any sort of trinkets that you have, because we're about to go into Combustion. Now, one thing that's kind of odd here is that we are casting Scorch before we go into our Combustion. So we're using the Scorch to fish for a Hot Streak proc, right? Because the Phoenix Flames is a guaranteed critical strike. That's going to give us our heating up. And then if our Scorch crits, that's going to put us into a Hot Streak. So if Scorch does critical strike and we get a Hot Streak proc, then our step 6 will change. And what we're trying to do with this Scorch is we're trying to cheese it essentially with Combustion. So we're not necessarily finishing a cast of Scorch and then pressing Combustion. We are casting Scorch, and while we're casting Scorch, we're doing other things here in step 6. So the Scorch cast is going off. We're in our heating up from our Phoenix Flames. And while we're casting Scorch, we're going to Fire Blast, and that is going to get us into a Hot Streak. And we can queue up, or we could send out a Pyroblast as that Scorch is ending. So, excuse me, the Scorch from step 5 all the way down to step 7, it's the same Scorch all the way through. We're just doing other things while that Scorch is being casted. And this is going to allow us to pull something off called the double pyroblast. So to break this down a little bit more, essentially what's happening is the Phoenix Flames is putting us into our first heating up. The Fire Blast, while we are casting Scorch, is going to put us into our hot streak. And then our Combustion with the Power Blast that we just sent out, along with the Scorch that we've been casting this entire time, are both going to hit the target at the same time, resulting in another hot streak, allowing for 2 back-to-back Power Blasts. Then that next Power Blast, so that second Power Blast that just went out, will crit. That will get you into heating up again. And then from here, it gets a little bit more simple. And you just Pyro Blast, Fire Blast over and over until we are out of our Fire Blast charges. So let's go ahead and go into the single target priority now. So inside Combustion, same thing. We're trying to cheese our Scorch with our Combustion so that we can get back-to-back Power Blast procs. And then from there, we're just alternating Power Blast, Fire Blast, or if we don't have Fire Blast charges, then Power Blast, Phoenix Flames. And if we don't have either Fire Blast or Phoenix Flames, we can use Scorch to help us generate the hot streak during Combustion. So really, our priority stays the same as it did above while we're inside this Combustion window. Very similar to our opener. And then we also have our single target outside of Combustion. So your main priority is going to be to get into heating up. Once you are heating up, we want to pair our Scorch with our Fire Blast. Now, the reason you want to Scorch here with your Fire Blast, because the Fire Blast is going to proc our hot streak, and then the Scorch we just get to cast for free essentially, since we already proc the hot streak. So it's just essentially like a free Scorch that we're getting in there. But you want to make sure that you're not like casting Scorch by itself without a Fire Blast, because if it doesn't crit, you're going to waste your heating up proc. But once we do go into a hot streak, we want to Power Blast, and we want to prioritize Power Blast with our hypothermia if that does proc. If not, use Power Blast with the hot streak that we just got. And then from here, we want to shifting power. So we get some CDR on our Combustion, our Fire Blast, and our Phoenix Flames. One thing to note is that while you are channeling shifting power, you can Fire Blast to keep yourself from overcapping on those charges. If you are out of Fire Blast charges, you can go ahead and Phoenix Flame so that we can build up to our next hot streak. And then from here, we're just going to use Fireball as our filler. Okay, going into our AoE opener, it's going to be the exact same as our single target opener. The only difference is we're replacing Flame Strike replacing Power Blast with Flame Strike. So mirror image to avoid threat, and then we will Flame Strike as a hard cast before the pool is going out. We'll go into a Phoenix Flames as the Flame Strike is ending, and then just like in the single target rotation, we'll use our Tempered Potion, Trinkets, whatever we can use to get as much damage amp as we possibly can before we go into our Combustion window here. And then from here, we'll start to queue that Scorch. And then while that Scorch is casting, right, we're going to go into our Combustion from here. And you may or may not be in a hot streak. If you are in a hot streak, then you can skip the Fire Blast in step 6 here. If not, then go ahead and Fire Blast while you are casting that Scorch. And when both your Flame Strike and your Scorch go off, that's going to put you into another hot streak because they're both going to critical strike. And then from there, we will just rotate Fire Blast, Flame Strike until you're out of Fire Blast charges. Now we'll go into the AoE inside Combustion priority because we are still in Combustion. Now most of the stuff here in step 1, we can kind of skip because this is just kind of talking about getting into Combustion and then getting that Flame Strike and Scorch to go off at the same time, which we already did in the opener. So going down to step 2 here, your next priority is going to be a Hypothermia proc. If that does proc, just go into spamming those Flame Strikes. From there, we'll want to consume a hot streak with our Flame Strike. And then from here, we're just going to prioritize getting into our next hot streak with Fire Blast, then Phoenix Flames, and then Scorch. From here, we're going to be casting same thing as single target out of Combustion, Fire Blast with a Fireball or Scorch. Again, only while we're heating up. Do not do that outside of heating up. From here, we'll prioritize Flame Strike with Hypothermia or a hot streak. And then from here, the whole idea is to shifting power to get CDR and Combustion, Fire Blast, Phoenix Flames. Remember, while we are casting shifting power, we can cast a Fire Blast if we were to overcap on charges. And then from here, we can Scorch if the target's below 30% health. Again, this will critical strike if the target is below 30% health. So, like kind of as an execute, you can just spam Scorch to basically guarantee a hot streak. If the target is over 30% health, then we can rely on Phoenix Flames. And then finally, you can use Fireball as a filler. If you guys enjoyed the video, please consider liking, subscribing to the channel. Again, there's going to be a link in the description of this video with the talents. And if you want more detail, you can just click the link and kind of read through some of it yourself. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you in the next one.